Hello friends, I am the moderator of the event. My name is Nidhi and EduPristine welcomes you to our first one such webinar. Hi Louis, I think we can start the webinar.
Very good. Well, first of all, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us in this webinar. My name is Luis Ramirez, and I am the Vice President of Human Resources with Talent Global Education. I have the pleasure to speak to you today from cold Chicago, and I hope that the technology is going to be friendly to us today so that we have a good and productive presentation, and hopefully at the end also we'll engage in interesting dialogue, as Nidhi mentioned. For the benefit of the flow of this presentation, we thought it would be better to wait until the end to capture all the questions that you may have. You will see we have quite a bit of content. I'm going to try to speak quickly so that we cover all the material. But I look forward to engaging in some interesting question and answer at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'm going to begin. Let me make sure that this works. All right. So the agenda for this hour, I'm going to cover quickly a little bit about Adtalem and EduPristine. I want to make sure you're familiar with both organizations. Obviously you're here, so you're familiar with EduPristine, but I also wanted to spend a minute talking about the parent company Adtalem. Then we're going to dive into the content of the presentation. We're going to talk about what drives enterprise value. We're going to talk about the top talent model, particularly for those of you that are HR professionals or consultants in the talent space. I hope that you will find this valuable. We're going to talk about the importance of recruiting and focusing on A players, focusing on how you upgrade the workforce, how do you focus on selecting the absolute best people you can. Talent management, the critical strategic process that needs to be embedded in your organization. And also, we're going to spend a few minutes about development. So that's, in a nutshell, the content of my presentation. And again, for those of you that are not familiar with our company, allow me to just introduce you to Adtalem Global Education. Adtalem is, the name of Adtalem is fairly new. It was, the company used to be called the RI Universities. Currently, Adtalem has an international presence. As you can see, it's a publicly traded company here in the United States. $1.2 billion in revenue. So it's not a small company. It's not a huge corporation. It's a growing organization. It's headquarters here in Chicago, 300 plus locations. We have presence in 10 countries, about 12,000 colleagues. Half of them are outside of the U.S. And we have several institutions. And also I will tell you a little bit of the history of the company. The organization was actually founded in 1931. At the time, it was called the Forest Training School. And this company evolved over the years, changed names multiple times. It went to the RI Technical Institute, which was mostly vocational education, vocational training. Then it went to be called the RI Universities. In the 1990s, it actually became the first publicly traded company in the education sector in the United States. And then, as I said, the name Adtalem Global Education was changed in 2016, so fairly recent. And what drove the change was the decision to move away from the RI because it was mostly a U.S. focus, campus-based, strong U.S. presence, and the strategy of the company was going to focus on international, and that's when Adtalem Global Education came to be. As far as our portfolio, you can see here the way that we're structured. So we have 3 vertical businesses. We offer programs in the medical and healthcare, which is the largest group in Adtalem, the professional education group, and business and technology. Medical and healthcare, as you can see, we have several brands. Chamberlain is a nursing school, the American University of the Caribbean, Ross University School of Medicine, and Veterinary School. These are all in the Caribbean. Business and technology, these brands are all based in Brazil. And then professional education, which is my group, we have 3 brands. ACAMS, which is the Association of Certified Anti-Money Laundering Professionals. We have Becker, which is a fabulous organization, a brand that is focused on financial training primarily. And then, of course, EduPristine, which I'm going to speak a little bit further in just one second. But that, in a nutshell, is the way we're organized, the way we're structured. And as I said, I am the Vice President of Human Resources for Professional Education Vertical. And what this, the distinguishing elements between medical, healthcare, and the business and technology is that professional education does not provide accredited degrees per se. These are all certified type of programs, short-term, long-term, online, presential, but not accredited degrees versus the other 2 businesses that are traditional higher education types. All right, let me jump into a little bit about EduPristine. I want to make sure that you are aware of this phenomenal portfolio that we have. On this page 7, you can see a quick summary of what we do, the highlights of our business. We are focused on presential training. We have, classroom training and webinars in different cities. You can see Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Pune. You can see our price point. And most important, you can see the product verticals, the type of offerings that we provide to our clients, customers like you. You can see the finance, the 2 strongest verticals in our portfolio of products. We're very strong. We have very strong position in the market. Marketing analytics are also 2 very interesting verticals that actually are the fastest growing for us. We also offer programs in healthcare, and we continue investing in developing and delivering new programs. So we're going to be focusing on innovative new programs in the future. And I think one of the aspects that distinguish our business and the way we approach education, we try to empower our students, our clients, in a way that we provide skills through experiential learning, through hands-on learning, can become successful and more successful professionals in their careers. Let me go to the next page. All right. This is also a snapshot of the company. As you can see, we have pan-India presence. We have a large body of faculty that we have, across the country. Let's see, what other things, we serve both types of clients. We offer programs to corporations. We have a number of very large accounts, clients, like KPMG, like Tata, JP Morgan, but we also work directly with individuals, professionals like yourselves, who are interested in developing their skill set. And so we have this type of offerings as well, not only large accounts, large, pools of employees, but also with corporate partnerships. As I said, the academic model that I think distinguishes EduPristine is that our methodology is very real life, is hands-on, which I think is very different from other organizations that offer similar type of training that may be more focused on theoretical learning. Ours is more experiential learning. But again, if you would like to learn more about EduPristine and all the offerings, I encourage you to reach out to Nidhi, and I'm sure she'll be very happy to provide you more details. All right, so let's go right into the content for our presentation, how to increase enterprise value through people. And I think, I hope that this is going to resonate you in many ways. So I'm going to start right with the concept. And as you can see, this slide number 11, enterprise value creation. And some of you may be business leaders, maybe financial leaders, and you can look at value creation with different lenses. If you look at the financial angle, you could come up with a different formula. If you're looking at marketing and the portfolio, you can look at a different way. But if I put my HR glasses on and I look at the value creation from the HR lens, this is the recipe that, in my opinion, we can articulate the way that we contribute to value creation in an organization. And the formula couldn't be simpler. These are the three primary blocks: top talent plus top performance plus big bets is going to equal increase value creation. Now, let me speak about a couple of things here. First of all, especially for those of you that are HR professionals, we have an incredible opportunity to influence the success of the organization and the enterprise value through top talent. And this is where I'm going to spend the bulk of the rest of my time here in this session, talking about this piece. What that means in terms of the top talent, we're talking about how to identify great people. How do you structure yourself for success? What processes and mechanisms you have to identify those individuals and to create the match between best talent in the jobs that add the most value. This is, to me, the essence of a successful organization. Now, the second column here, top performance, in HR, we also have a lot of influence. We can impact greatly the organization, sometimes indirectly. But think about this, how do you distinguish an outstanding, top-performing organization? So when the company offers sustained organic growth, when the achievements exceed their competitors, when there's a focus on measuring transformational indicators, and when you keep moving every step of the way, performance culture, delivering, exceeding expectations of your customers, exceeding financial results. This is the second element that fuels value creation. The third one typically is one dimension that is usually driven by the leadership of the organization. So big bets, meaning in most cases inorganic growth, mergers and acquisitions, decisions that the company typically makes, either enter a new market, adding a new company to the portfolio, but making significant investments in organizations that are going to complement your existing portfolio and is going to, once again, drive growth. But as I said, sometimes ingredients, if you will, of this recipe. So stay with me here. And if you look at page 12, Let me begin by explaining a little bit of the context before we talk about the specifics of how do you drive talent through people. The context of an organization, especially if you are part of a group or a company that is experiencing growth. We look at, the expectation. Every organization is looking at the future, is looking at what they expect in the next 3 to 5 years, the long-range plans. And, organizations that are growing single digits, they're going to see, a fairly small but steady growth. As I said here, this is the dotted line, business as usual, not a lot of variation. Organizations that expect to exceed the expectations of their shareholders, their employees, their customers, are going to be shooting for double-digit growth, and especially if you go 20% plus annual growth, there's going to be not only value creation, but there's going to be a lot of supplemental growth, and the speed of change is going to be significant. When you think about this kind of dynamic, there's going to be, number one, a significant gap in terms of people that unless you as an HR professional, if you don't address that gap, you're going to suffer. You're going to go through a lot of pain to keep up with the growth of your business. You're not going to have the bench to fill those jobs. But as I said at the top of this slide, what is most critical is to understand what are the roles in your organization, who are the people that are in those roles that are driving value, that are driving the growth of your business. And this, to me, is the most fundamental question for you as an HR professional to think about. Are we staffing for today? Are we just filling openings? Or are we making strategic decisions that are going to fuel the growth? Are we investing for the long term? In other words, are we hiring people for today, or are we hiring people for the individuals with the characteristics and competencies and skills that we will need 2 years from now, 3 years from now? For any of you who have been in fast-growing organizations, you know that when you are experiencing this wonderful problem of high growth, the organization is going to go through significant complexity. The jobs are going to increase in complexity as well in a 12, 18-month window. So if you're hiring for today and you're hiring the skill sets for today, I'm telling you, in a year from now, these individuals are going to be obsolete. The jobs are going to be over their head. So you always have to keep your eyes further down 2 years out in order to sustain that growth and support your organization. So let me continue digging into this concept of how do you stay ahead of the curve. How do you deliver results with the strategy of an organization that is in growth? So let's talk about this for a second. So this is the what I call the 3-step top talent model, and this is, by the way, this is not rocket science. For any of you who have been in human resources for a while, these are the 3 legs of what we say, these are the fundamental 3 pieces of the HR role. So we are in the company to attract great talent. We're here to retain top talent, and also we're here to develop that talent, right? Now, what is going to be different is how we address these pieces. And in the next few slides, I'm going to dig deeper into how we do these 3 things. In my view, in HR, we're not here just to hire and retain and develop. To me, the role of human resources is to add value to the enterprise through the people, but to add value. That's the key. All these, to me, is just different ways to articulate and explain how, but don't forget, at the end of the day, we have to add value. And so let's double click on these three components of the strategy, of the people strategy, and then we'll go into some of the details of what I just said, the how we add value. So, and by the way, I'm just checking. I think we're about midpoint here, midpoint in our time. I want to make sure that we're staying on track and we have sufficient time to cover everything. So let's double click on the selecting great talent and attracting top performers. So this is the first element. How do we select great people? So these are, in a way, think about the approach of selection, think about the structure and the philosophy behind your selection process, and also, and the third pillar here is more about the mechanics, the process of achieving recruitment of A players, great talent. So let me just mention a few things that I hope that it will resonate with you. A few things. So when it comes to selecting great people, I think that you need to think about how do you achieve the selection and the staffing of the absolute best talent that you can get. And first of all, you need to think about two things. Not only the skills, the capabilities, the skill set of the people that you need to bring in the organization to drive growth, but also the scale, the capacity, the knowing that your organization is going to grow. You need to think about skill and scale, both things, anticipating the curve of your business, staying ahead. Should you be hiring people 2 years before you need them? Can you afford making those strategic investments and perhaps hire people today for jobs that don't exist today? In other words, you bring them to the organization into spots that, again, 2 years before you need them. That's a strategic staffing, hiring ahead of the curve before those jobs exist. Can you afford that strategy? Use those 2 years to onboard that person, to give them the training, integrate them in the culture, but get them ready, not for that first job, not that for that placeholder that they're coming in, but to hire them, to get them ready for the real job for which you're hiring them, which will be open 2 years from now. That's strategic hiring. That's hiring ahead of the curve. Another, targeting overqualified candidates. This is the point I was making before. If you don't hire overqualified people a year from now, especially if you're in a fast-growing organization, those people are going to be completely over their heads. And then the other point that I want to bring to your attention is, in my view, every hire counts. And oftentimes I hear people saying, well, you know, organizations can't hire A players for every job. And I completely disagree with this philosophy. And you know, I can tell you, I've been in human resources for 30 years. I've been in multiple type of companies, international companies, large, small, startups, private equity. And I'm telling you, it is possible to hire A players. And I encourage you to push in your organization this mindset, whether you're hiring a general manager, a president, CFO, or an intern. Every opportunity is a chance for you to bring a superstar to the organization. So I'm a strong believer that every hire and every opportunity to bring a great person is should be our focus, okay? And then definitely, as I said at the bottom, onboard them well, bring them to the organization and make sure that these folks understand the expectations, the organization, the company, their organization, especially in high growth mode, that have this philosophy. I'm sure you have heard this sink or swim. So if they're smart enough, they're going to find solutions. They're going to learn on their own. But I encourage you to focus on onboarding these folks so that the learning curve, the acceleration of the learning of the business is faster. Now, let me talk a little bit about structure. So how do we do this? Okay, so first of all, establish clear criteria. Many organizations, as I said before, organizations that are in growth mode tend to be moving very, very fast. And oftentimes you run into situations where the job, maybe your manager, your client is pushing you, oh, we have this opening, just hire the person. You start the process, you start bringing candidates, and it's no, this person is not the right person, and it's all the result of the speed. You have to be able to put a timeout and determine what is it really that we're looking for. What's the criteria? What are the success factors? What are the elements that we're looking for? So that's in terms of the skill I was mentioned before. What are the components of that person's professional background and experience that they bring that we need? That needs to be well defined from the front end. We also need to make sure that there is a good fit, that the culture of the organization and the person that comes in is going to be key. I'm going to talk about that in just one second. Also, a little bit of the discipline. This is something that oftentimes entrepreneurial managers just hate to hear anything regarding to process, steps. Entrepreneurs like, I don't have time. Just get me the person, and I'm sure many of you have been in that situation. Hire the person as soon as possible. Don't worry about job descriptions. Let's get going. So this is kind of an art and a science. And the science side of recruiting great talent really requires a little bit of discipline. And I'm going to talk about that in the very next slide. And then be consistent. Don't go all over the place. One candidate is interviewed by 2 people, another candidate comes in and is interviewed by 6 people, and so you have different inputs, different perspectives. A little bit of consistency, a little bit of discipline is going to pay off big time, and it's going to enable you to make good, well-informed decisions. So these are a few things in terms of structure that I would recommend. And again, based on my experience, and I've lived in different worlds, superstructure recruitment. I remember my days at Motorola. In Motorola, we were very organized, very structured, etc. But I spent time in a startup, in an internet startup, in a service provider in the internet world, and in that organization, we were driving 100 miles an hour. We couldn't stop, and it was all about go, go, go. And I can tell you, there somewhere in between, where you put a little bit of process and order, pays off big time long term. And then the final point here, kind of a couple things that kind of overlap. Clear role definition, interviewing, multiple candidates. Don't jump into the very first person that comes across and say, oh, this person is good enough. Let's just keep going. Good enough is not good enough, okay? I encourage you to make sure you establish a high standard of expectations, and that you insist in having, again, a set of choices so that you can pick the absolute best. Don't be quick to pull the trigger on an offer. Make sure that you have checked the boxes of what the organization needs. Apply preset criteria, competencies, and I will talk about that in one second. To me, one of the most critical success factors in selecting top talent is having clarity as to what you need. And then the next point, which I highlighted here in red, matching. sometimes hiring managers will tell you, this person is not good, and I believe that people are good. There's no good or bad people. I believe that the key here is this a right fit for us or not? But it's not about good or bad. I've had situations where I've been interviewing spectacular candidates with impressive resumes, amazing CVs, and we actually made the decision to hire individuals that on paper look less qualified. And the reason is because that other person had the right cultural fit to the organization and the business. So it's not necessarily about who is the strongest, who has the flashiest CV. It's about, is this person going to be a great match to the company, to the organization, to the culture? And that is something that also, especially for those of you that are HR professionals, you're going to have to zero in this very critical nuance that will define success. Validate credentials, that means, doing your homework, making sure that background checks are done, that you verify employment, you verify, that the person doesn't have baggage or anything negative that could impact your business and your credibility. So you also need to do that piece. And then conduct deep and meaningful reference checks. Also, I will tell you, I have encountered, and I'm sure you have too, I have encountered managers that are in a big hurry to fill the jobs. It's like, oh, no, let's just get the person as soon as possible, and are happy to skip steps. Also, I'm sure you have heard people that say, well, reference checks are really not valuable. People are not going to tell you the truth. Candidates are going to send you, references of people that they are their friends, and they're going to speak nice things about them. So nobody's going to give you, any insights that are going to change your mind. Well, again, my view and my experience completely disagree with that. Reference checks done well are going to provide you an incredible amount of business intelligence about this individual. And I encourage you to also being very focused and very purposeful about gathering business intelligence, gathering information, and gathering as many facts about this person as possible. I'll talk about that in just 1 second as well. So let me talk about the actual process. Let me, and I think you're going to find this interesting. This process is almost universal. Everybody does it kind of the same way. So you look at these 5 steps. So the definition, the job description. So everybody looks at, or sometimes better, sometimes faster, sometimes not as thorough. But I would also invite you to be, rigorous in this process. Okay, so make sure you identify the competencies, the elements that are going to distinguish and help this person be successful in the role. You need to know what you're looking for, and then just follow through to gather intelligence to confirm that individual, in fact, has those skills. The second is interviews, and everybody does interviews in different levels, but there's also oftentimes I get the question, okay, well, how many interviews should we do? What's the right number? Some companies are very quick, they have a couple people involved, make decisions, boom. Other organizations are very tedious. They put candidates, and I bet that many of you have gone through that experience interviewing with companies. You've met with 12 people, and you're wondering, I'm not sure what they're getting out of these interviews. What I can tell you is that if you read the most recent literature on interviews, the Society of Human Resources Management has published some studies about this, and the sweet spot for the optimal interview number is between 4 to 6. So research has shown that when you start interviewing and you have more than 6 interviews, what is that? The law of diminishing returns, that beyond 6 interviews, there's a lot of repetition. You're not going to gather a lot of more new information about the person. There's going to be candidate fatigue as well, when the person is going to be saying, I don't know how many people I need to see. I don't know what additional data you're getting. So if you structure the interviews and you have the plan, every interview, every round, you focus on some complementary piece to create this mosaic of data. After 6 interviews, you should have pretty good tangible information that will help you make those decisions. But you need to, once again, you need to plan it. You need to define, okay, Mary is going to focus on these attributes, Johnny is going to focus on these other, and then you gather the information, and then all of a sudden things start complementing each other, and you create a nice mosaic of data that will help you hopefully make good decisions. On the competency-based feedback, I'm going to talk about that in the next page. But you need to gather those facts. You will understand why I'm very focused on this competency piece. I also believe that psychometric tests are super important. Behavioral-based interviewing and psychometric testing will provide you an additional reading on those competencies. So it's not so much finding new information. Instead, it's to validate all the things that you have heard through the interview process. So if you heard the person is very analytical, the person is very customer focused, is very international, is very flexible, the psychometric testing is a completely unbiased, objective review of that individual, and the tests are going to give you that verification and validation. On the checks, as I said before, really important, completing direct and indirect references. And as you can see in the bottom here, my recommendation, throughout my career, I've learned that if you're hiring individual contributors, ideally you should at least make, between 3 to 6 reference checks, people that the candidate can provide to you, but also I like indirect references, so I can find through systems like LinkedIn, through my networking, I can find out people that may know that candidate and gather some intelligence that will once again help you validate. Now, if you're hiring a senior leader, my view is that you should complete between 6 to 12 references, so 3 to 4 former bosses, 3 to 4 peers, 3 to 4 direct reports. When you are able to speak with so many people that are going to once again confirm and validate the information you have gathered through the selection process, and it's going to, and you're going to hear consistent messaging, you're gonna feel very comfortable, and it's going to help you minimize the risk when you make. And finally, you have to analyze the whole set of data. You have to make fact-based decisions based on all this information you have collected. Okay, all right. Let me talk about technical competencies, and this is something that I would invite you and encourage you to develop your own. This is just one example, but you're gonna appreciate the rigor. When I said before, you need to know what you're looking for. This is an example of how I structure my selection. So you have 4 groups of attributes: career attributes, personal attributes, leadership competencies, and the company culture, the company DNA. And this could be, the values of the organization. And of course, every company has different aspects that they consider part of their culture DNA. These are elements. So, if your company believes in social responsibility and is very international and believe in teamwork. So all these values, collaboration, people focus, etc., those are non-negotiable. You know that if somebody doesn't meet this criteria, the person is automatically eliminated. Now, your client group may have some distinguishing elements, and this is something that I've done in a number of occasions, digging and trying to, and I conducted studies to identify these critical leadership competencies that differentiate the top performers of your business. And there's a whole methodology, and maybe that should be a subject for another webinar, of how do you identify these critical success competencies for your business. And you're not going to have two businesses with the same. This is so unique about your business, but you need to know what you need to look for. The personal attributes, these are things that you're going to see. Sometimes they're not competencies, but they're elements that you can tell. If you're an international company, you're going to be looking for people that have, multilingual skills, that are mobile, that can move from country to country, that are culturally adaptable. And then the career attributes, you want to see, what is the pattern in their career? Are they jumping around, or are they having their career patterns is steady growth in complexity, responsibility? It's very important to identify those career attributes that you believe are going to be success factors for your business. This one page plus the technical competencies, of course, if you're looking for a CFO, you want somebody that has all the financial acumen that is going to enable him or her to be a successful CFO, a marketing person, an HR person, an IT person. So these are strictly leadership, career, personal attributes, plus, as I said, technical. So I hope this helps you understand, the rigor and the importance of knowing what you're looking for. And this is also another illustration as when it comes to discipline. Think about creating a document like this for your own business, where you see, the different, so you see the company competencies. These are the attributes that you feel that these are the most critical with your management. These are the elements that are essential for key leaders in your organization. And every round, so the interview process, you're going to be looking for these elements. Then you're going to have psychometric testing. You're going to do competency-based interviewing. You may have several batteries of tests. You can do numerical reasoning. You can do the occupational personality questionnaire. These are, this is an SHL product, or decision styles. This is a Conferry product. Each one of these tests measure different things. And what you want is to make sure that each one of these dimensions, analytical competency, innovative, inquisitive, that you have multiple cross-checking that person, in fact, has these attributes in their background. And then, of course, background checks. But the discipline and the rigor, I hope that you understand. Now, on page 20, you see an example of what I use as the scorecard. So when I complete a process with a candidate, I present a document like this to my hiring manager. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where, your company has psychometric tests and all this documentation, and the consulting group brings in a 15-page report full of beautiful, colorful charts with 27 dimensions. And the hiring manager starts reading this and their eyes start rolling. Most hiring managers are not certified psychometric testing interpreters. And what I find is that when you have a scorecard like this, one pager, look, these are the dimensions, this is where the person fits, these are the areas that are below expectations, these are the strengths that we have discovered, but this is fact-based, this is evidence-based decision-making. I'm telling you, your hiring managers are going to love you when you are able to simplify and provide tangible data based on facts in this format, absolutely, they're going to, no, number one, it's going to make your life easier. You're going to have a record, and it's going to be a lot more efficient, reducing risk of that hiring decision. And I encourage you to come up with your own format or the template that will help you achieve these. All right, I'm realizing I'm going close to the end of our time here, so I'm going to move quickly here. Talent management is the second dimension. And let me just mention a couple things. This seems like a very busy chart, but it's very simple in the sense that the top row, strategic planning, this is the standard business planning process. So every company will analyze how we're going to win, how we're going to go to market, what are our great business opportunities, what are our capabilities. They cover this in their strategic planning cycle. They talk about that in their long-range planning. They talk about that in their budget process. But the second block, the talent management process, is the piece that you are going to add value to the discussion. So first of all, talent management has to be part of your strategic planning. So just like the business leaders are going to talk about what they're going to deliver to their customers and how, meaning the resources and the budgets, you're going to have to provide insights as to who is going to deliver that strategy. And these three work rows illustrates the work streams. Number one, what is the optimal organizational structure? Second, who are the people that are in those jobs that are going to make the greatest contribution? And third, realize that you're not going to achieve success just by hiring. You're going to have to optimize your organization and develop and put projects and plans in place to accelerate the growth of your internal people. But at the end of this, you have to have a plan, a roadmap to upgrade your talent in the organization. This is simply the 6 components. Many of you, talent management is a process that's been around for decades. But these are the 6 components. You need to have an understanding of what your organization looks like today. You need to know what the organization is going to look like 12 months from now. So what are the changes, new jobs, changes, splitting positions? You need to know what's your talent inventory. Who are these key people? What their strengths, their areas of development, what's the future potential? The 9 box, same thing. Many of you have seen these. Many of you, I bet, have been in companies that use 9 box and plot your talent in terms of what their potential and their performance. Performance is a vertical axle, the potential is a horizontal axle, and you plot your talent, so that gives you the landscape of your talent. Succession planning, same thing. What are the key jobs? Who are in those jobs? And who do we have in the bench that will be ready 1 to 2 years from now, 3 to 5 years from now, to step up? And then ultimately, the last page, the action plan. What are you going to do in terms of new hires? Maybe you need to exit some people. Where are you going to be developing talent? Who are those people that need that development? Do we need to do anything to secure that somebody doesn't leave the organization, retention, etc.? These are the 6 components of your talent management process. And I encourage you, if you don't have anything like this, I encourage you to do it in your organization. And finally, the last segment, development. So as I said, hiring is not enough. And in order to achieve high growth in your organization, you're going to have to, first of all, hold your leaders accountable for talent development. This has to be completely hardwired in the way you reward your leaders. But you're going to have to build tools and processes to groom your folks internally and develop them and drive execution in the organization. If you do that, these are the outcomes. So this is going to be an automatic result of having all these building blocks in the organization. However, when it comes to leadership development, oftentimes people think that you should provide a whole portfolio of programs to everybody. And one thing that I encourage you to keep in mind is that leadership development has to be differential investment based on the people. So you have here potential 5 different audiences. You have the team at the top. You have the people that are in the pipeline to be future successors. You have also a large population of people that you're grooming to be the next generation leaders. You also have people that may have been given that promotion opportunity. And then you have the general manager population. Each one of these will require a totally different approach and investment through different programs to achieve what you need. But there's no company that will be able to afford everything for everybody. So remember, differential investment. And then my final slide, just to conclude, and I am right on time. The conclusion here, we talked about talent and EduPristine. We talk about what drives enterprise value: talent, top performance, big bets. But your role, especially for those of you that are HR professionals, your focus on hiring the best, developing the best, having the discipline and the strategy to achieve these great hires. You cannot afford making mistakes, especially if your growth is, double digit, cannot afford making mistakes in key hires. And then ultimately, make that plan of identifying what investment need to be done on what population in order to fuel that growth. Anyway, I'm going to stop here. I just hope that, especially now that we're 1 minute over time, I hope that if you learn one thing, if as a result of this 1 hour, if you're able to walk away with one idea, I think this time would have been certainly worth your while. And I wish you all the best. I hope this was helpful and informative. And I look forward to perhaps having other webinars in the future. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nidhi. I don't know if we have any questions or whether we have any time left. So please, Nidhi, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Louis. It was a very, very informative webinar, and I hope all of you have found tons of value through it. Now, if you have any questions, you have on the right panel questions module on your side. Okay, I have a question someone has written, so we'll just wait for the question to pop in. So all of you, you can use the question section and you can send your questions to us.
And by the way, Nidhi, what I was going to say, we don't have additional time. We can collect these questions and I will be happy to respond to them directly via email or some other way. But I will be happy to entertain any questions that, any follow-up questions afterwards.
Okay, got it. So we have a couple of questions. Louis, do you have time? Can we take 15 minutes?
I do, absolutely, yes.
Okay, perfect. So I think, yeah, we are getting a lot of questions. Just let me read one by one.
Okay.
So first of all, a comment. Varda is saying, would love to attend more such sessions and get more insights. Thank you, Varda. Minakshi is saying, do you have webinar on employee engagement? So Minakshi, we can certainly have something planned on employee engagement. Thank you for your comment. Vijayaraj is saying, everybody values soft skills and that people should be trained in it. But when budgets are tight, how do you quantify the potential benefits? So maybe I can read. Do you want me to read the question, Louis? Again?
Yes, read it again. Read it again.
Yeah. So the question is, everybody values soft skills and
yes,
that people should be trained in it. But when budgets are tight, how do you quantify the potential benefits? Like, how do you quantify the potential benefits of training people on soft skills, I believe?
Yes, well, I mean, the soft skills, I think it has nothing to do with budgets. I think that you need to target individuals, as I was saying before, the competencies, their hard skills and their soft skills. And those need to be there. And the budgets maybe will impact how you recruit. Can you afford engaging an agency? Do you have to do all the recruitment all on your own? Which, by the way, nowadays you have tools like LinkedIn that are able to identify, active and passive candidates on your own without engaging agencies. For very little money, you can get yourself a recruiting membership that will give you full access to the entire database. But to me, it's not about budget. Budgets will impact how you recruit, but not what you recruit. I agree. You need individuals with hard skills, technical skills. But when you think about many of the examples that I gave you in Competencies, most of those are soft skills. And if you determine that, somebody has to be, great listener, flexible, a great communicator, empathy. So some of these things, identifying and verifying that they have, you can obtain through behavioral-based interviewing. You can verify that. So I don't think the budget is going to necessarily prevent you from hiring soft skills in your organization. It will impact how you do the recruitment. I hope that answers your question. What else, Nidhi?
So Vijay is saying yes, thanks. We have another question that says appreciate. So it's from JK Sahu. He's saying appreciate for organizing knowledge sharing session. And the question is, how do you quantify and show the result with number of board team? So the question is, I repeat, how do you quantify and show the result with number to board team? So I think he's asking how to quantify and show results to board members.
The impact. Okay, well, I can tell you, in my previous role, I worked for Laureate Education, also a higher education company, very successful, 80 universities in 35 countries. I had responsibilities for HR in Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia. I had 15 countries, and I was doing a lot of interviewing, a lot of selection, a lot of leadership building. But before I took that regional role, I had global talent responsibilities, and we put in place at Laureate a methodology that, like I described to you, very rigorous behavioral-based interviewing, psychometric testing, etc. What I can tell you is, after 2 years of implementing this new methodology, the impact was spectacular. And in fact, we conducted a validation study to demonstrate that the investments that we're making in all the money that we put into psychometric testing, that it was worthwhile. So the CEO asked me to demonstrate that this was in fact helping us make better decisions and recruit more. So we look at 3 different dimensions. I look at retention, I looked at performance of the people, and bonus that they receive, and merit increases. So these 4 dimensions. What we did is look at all the people that we hired prior to implementing this methodology. And prior to that time, our retention rate was among senior leadership. That was the focus of the study. It was a 60% retention rate. After we implemented this methodology, we were at 93% retention rate, in a spectacular change. So that told us, you're hiring the right people and they're sticking around. They have a good fit with the organization. But then I also compare, performance scores, so their annual evaluation, and I looked at how much money they were getting in their merit increases and how much money they were getting in their bonuses. Same thing. I did a comparison before the process and after. The numbers were so spectacular. So I was asked to present the findings to the board of directors. They loved it. And then I was asked to present at the Leadership Summit, which is an annual event with the top 300 people in the company. I presented this methodology. And what happened is then many people came to talk to us to see, can we start using similar methodology with middle management as well? Even we looked into entry-level managers. So the approach is different, the psychometric testing is different, the competencies are different, but the thought process and the methodology similar. So the ingredients will be different, but the methodology works. So it's absolutely no-brainer. Your board, if you're able to show the before and the after, they're going to be so happy. So that's how I demonstrated the value of this approach. Okay? Any more questions, Nidhi?
Thanks, Louis. J.K. Sahu, he has added few points to his questions. He's saying, my question is on impact on learning and development program as time is money. So I think you have already covered a bit about it. And
okay.
J.K. Sahu, if you have further questions, you can put it in the questions box. We have another question from Vijayaraj Kamath.
Okay, go ahead.
So it's a question and a quote. Is he a good culture fit? Might result in hiring similar people? Does this conflict with diversity? So if we are saying he's a good culture fit, so will we hire similar
Absolutely
people
not.
and will it conflict?
Absolutely not. In fact, I would say that when you take this approach, chances are that you're going to bring to the organization individuals that are going to come from multiple backgrounds. I mean, as far as race, gender, absolutely not. I mean, my experience has never been a concern. You're looking for hard skills, soft skills, cultural fit. That doesn't mean that everybody is going to be the same or that they're going to think the same way. If you need someone that has a strong global background, that person could come from just about anywhere in the world, could have different perspectives, and it's going to facilitate to enrich your workforce. And I think that's the best way to approach it. I think if you don't have clear criteria of what you're looking for, I think hiring managers tend to actually hire people that they just feel a gut feel reaction of, I kind of like this person, thinks like me, works like me, and therefore I'm going to lean towards some of the things that I'm biased towards, which is my comfort zone. If he likes the same things I like, if he works the same way I work, then it's going to be successful. But in reality, is that doesn't mean that person is going to be a good fit for the organization. So I would say completely the opposite. If you follow this methodical approach, the output is going to be, by design, a diverse hiring pool.
So the question asker is saying, true, not having clarity is the real cause of relying on my biases rather than evidence. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, we have another question from Girish Chandran. So the question is, how long would you suggest an induction for middle and entry-level personnel?
So very different. So an entry-level person in the organization, the induction, it could be as brief as a one-day overview. Spending time in the front end with an onboarding program is simply accelerating the readiness of that individual to understand the history, the background, the essence of the business, what the customers look like, what their expectations are, the strategy of the business. If the person understands that from the get-go, again, whether that individual is an entry-level salesperson or if it's a senior executive, the more they know, the faster their learning curve and their integration they're going to start producing a lot faster than if there's nothing. In other words, they're going to have to find that out on their own by talking to colleagues, and it could take weeks, if not months, to really internalize, what is this company about? So, so that is the general answer to your question. The response is the sooner and the more information they know and they have, the faster they're going to be producing. Now, for middle manager, I would think that you wouldn't spend a little bit of time investing in them, especially if they have people responsibility. They need to understand also expectations of being a manager. What does that mean in your company? If you're a manager, are you, certainly driving results of the department or a function? You're going to be leading other folks, in the organization. And as a manager, they need to understand, what are things that are acceptable, unacceptable, what are the ground rules, what is the culture, how they're going to be hiring in the future, what's the expectation. So a hiring manager or a middle manager is going to require more dedicated attention. They're going to need to understand the business, first of all, in-depth understanding of the business. And that may be covering one day. If you're in a big organization, it could require 4 or 5 days program to understand everything about the business. Then, there's going to be a number of people that they will need to work, business partners, cross-functional individuals. So your onboarding has to have one component of content related to the business, related to the culture, and the third component is all the relationships, key work partners that this person will need to have. So the sooner you get them in front of those colleagues, the faster they're going to become more productive and more effective. So maybe in your company, it could be, 5 people. In other companies that are multi-matrix, it could be a list of 30 people. But you need to identify those critical work partners so that person can become integrated. And again, the more that you invest in the front end, the faster their integration and their impact. So how much and how long, that's really your call. But these are the fundamental principles of onboarding.
Thanks, Louis. We have
Okay.
addition to that question by Girish. Girish is saying, thanks, Louis. Would you recommend having a structure for the entire process of induction, as many SME in India may not have the same? He also adds saying that many of them currently have the same done via OJT process, which is entirely person driven, unfortunately not process driven. Mm-hmm. So I'll read the first part again. Would you recommend having a structure for the entire process of induction, as many SME in India may not have the same?
Absolutely. And I understand, as I said, differential investment, the different people are going to require different support. As an HR professional, you need to determine what's the right amount. But regardless, I am a strong believer that structure and having a well thought out program is essential. And depending on the nature of the job, the impact of error, the complexity of the position, these are important factors that are going to determine and help you decide how much time, how much money, what is the content, what's the length of the program. But you just need to make that determination based on your business. And I understand, depending on, if you work for an organization that is in early stage, they may not have any training resources. They may not have even an HR manager. So an early stage company is going to have very thin resources, and it's going to be difficult to have a well-structured program. If you're in a mid-size growing company, you probably have some resources and you will have the opportunity to put some things in place. Big corporations, of course, they have all the bells and whistles, all the structure, the programs, etc. So you need to determine, based on the complexity and maturity of your business, what's the right approach for your organization.
Thank you, Louis. We have another question. I think this is intended towards me. The question is, do you offer customized training solutions? So yes, we do. So Rahul, yes, we do offer customized training solutions at EduPristine. At EduPristine, we have a dedicated B2B wing, and in fact, in this year, we have done over 30 B2B trainings, ranging from finance, accounting, marketing, healthcare, and analytics. And we can customize it as per the training requirements you have. So yeah, that's to answer you. And there is another question. Okay, Girish is saying thanks, Atom Lewis.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Girish Chandran is saying thank you for your response.
Oh, okay. Great.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
So we have another question. So in services organizations, sometimes there are urgent requirements for key upcoming project. Even if we have clarity on all various recruitment dimensions, we might be short on time and have to compromise on the skills. Not hiring someone soon might mean losing or harming the project. Do you have any guidelines to handle such dilemmas?
You know what? I wish I did. I'm still looking for the crystal ball to give me an answer, and if you find it, let me know, because I'd like to buy one. That is where the art comes in. I said at the beginning of my presentation that recruitment is an art and a science. And this is the art part. I don't think anybody can give you an answer. There's a real fine line between, can you afford keeping these open positions much longer? If the project is at risk, you're gonna have to make the tough decision, even if the person is not ideal and optimal. It's all a factor of what's the risk. If you bring the wrong person, and this project that you're talking about is critical, strategic, fundamental, and if you bring the wrong person and the project fails, I'm not sure that you're going to be in better shape than if you kind of delay until you find the right person. What I would say is that sometimes you just need to make the best decision that you can make based on what you have done. If you have done everything that you could, you still haven't been able to find the right person, either you can bring in a temporary, you can hire a consultant to fill in for the period of time, so that at least you get the project started. You can find an internal resource, even if it's not an optimal perfect fit, but at least to get it going. And if you find somebody that you think is good enough for the project, but again, if you're confident that the person has the minimum requirements, even if he doesn't have everything, but has the minimum technical knowledge to deliver on that project, you may have to pull the trigger and say, okay, let's go with this individual. But I don't know that anybody can give you a right answer. As I said, if you find that crystal ball with the answer, let me know.
Thank you. Thank you, Louis, for answering this tricky question. I will take a moment to launch the poll. So guys, you're going to see, I'm just making this poll live. You can see a poll in front of you. So please feel free to select one of the radio buttons. Okay, thank you for your response. We are done with the poll and we will be getting back to our questions. Varda is saying, how do we hire lateral senior positions wherein not much change in CTC? So how do we attract people at senior level? Will networking with them and identifying their personal priorities in terms of their aims and goals and pitching in accordingly help to hunt them?
Well, senior executive recruitment, it's absolutely critical, number one. Number two, you need to make sure that the person's aspirations, goals are aligned with the business. Oftentimes you come across very seasoned professionals that maybe may have been in bigger jobs, and you wonder, why would this person be interested in working for us? Why would they take a pay cut to work for us? I think that there's some situations where individuals are in a point in their life that may have done that, been there, title is not that important anymore, but they want to be part of something fun, exciting, build something new, apply all their lessons of experience into a new organization. So I think that with very seasoned and experienced professionals, so you have the two types. One that is an executive that has long-term projection, somebody that is going to take the business to the next level. And then there's other types of senior executives that are coming in to accelerate the growth or accelerate the speed and apply great experience to the business. That's what I've encountered. And regardless, you need to make sure that the technical knowledge, the competencies, cultural fit are there. So that is a non-negotiable, regardless. But anyway, I don't know if that answers your question. Senior executive recruitment is fascinating, but it's a high-risk sport. High risk because the cost of failure could be devastating, or it requires discipline, structure, documentation, and you need to check every box before you decide this is the right fit for the organization. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Louis. Vada, if you have any more questions, you can just type in. Okay, we have another question. I think it looks like a follow-up question.
Okay.
Let us say we do come up with a clear metrics of skill set and competencies, and then realize that the current people to role fit is not optimal. How do you reverse this? Because demoting, firing people and massing is not an option.
Yeah. So competency models are supposed to be living documents. So you're never going to be completely perfect. First of all, because the organization is going to be evolving. So usually competency models, if you've done your study, you have looked at all the critical success factors, and you have concluded, okay, these are the 12 leadership competencies that work for us. Chances are that model is going to have a shelf life of about 4 to 5 years, no more, because the organization is going to evolve and other things are going to surface. New aspects of the business are going to require certain new criteria. So first of all, keep that in mind, that those models are not set in stone, number one. Number two, once you determine, okay, this is, if you go through a study to identify those critical competencies, you're going to have to monitor year after year how good this is helping you select talent. One thing that also I did in my previous company is to institute what we call the annual postmortem review. So we would hire people all year round, and then every year in December, we would sit down with our consulting firm that did all our psychometric testing, and we would analyze mistakes that we made during that year. So we would look at individuals that passed all the tests, met all the criteria, and still failed. Either they quit or we ended up terminating them. So we analyze those individuals. So we gather input from the hiring manager. We gather information, performance information, email correspondence, keyword partners. So we try to understand what is it that we didn't ask? What did we miss? What elements we didn't measure that caused this person to fail? So I can tell you that when I work at Laureate, we did a number of adjustments in our model based on this postmortem. And one of the aspects, for example, flexibility we felt that flexibility was one of the critical success factors. And we identified people that were very rigid. The current psychometric test and our interview process was not really measuring effectively flexibility. So we identify another product that measures flexibility. Once we incorporated that test into our battery, the success improved dramatically. So this is just an illustration that you just can't determine, okay, these are the 10 aspects that we need to look after and identify and select against. But it's something that you're going to have to monitor very closely, at least on an annual basis. And you may conclude, okay, this is less critical. This is absolutely a must-have. This is a non-negotiable. And this could be, we could be a little bit more open-minded. That person can be, so the point is, none of these models have to be set on stone. You need to be open-minded, and you have to be ready to make course correction as you go. As your experience shows you, you're going to have to be able to make adjustments.
Thank you, Luis. I think it's really very helpful. We have received, again, received a couple of thank yous. People are also asking about what would be our next topic of webinar. So guys, we will schedule our next webinar and we will let you know. We haven't yet decided. Someone is saying it would be great if you can mention expectation or need from next webinar. Certainly we will email you the same. So I think that's all for now. We are running out of time. And I have received a lot of thank you messages, Luis. So I will just compile this in an email and I'll send it across to you.
Very good.
I'll send across the questions as well. And thank you so much. Thank you for taking the session and telling us so much about how to increase enterprise value through people. It was a really very informative, valuable session.
Very good. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And as I said, as long as you are able to extract one new idea, new concept that you can apply to make you or your organization successful, all of this was well worth it. So good luck to all of you, and thank you, Nidhi, for all your help. Have a great day.
Thank you, Luis.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.